In 1987, Apple was weeks away from disappearing. No money, no direction, and completely outmatched by Microsoft. But just a few years later, Apple didn't just survive, it was dominating the music industry. So, what happened? The answer wasn't a computer. In the late 90s, Apple was a mess. It had way too many products and none of them stood out. Sales were dropping and its identity was completely lost. Meanwhile, Windows dominated the world. It wasn't just the most used operating system, it was the standard. It was everywhere, in offices, in homes, in universities. If you used a computer, chances are it was running Windows. And that created an unstoppable effect. The more people used it, the more companies developed for it. The more applications it had, the more people chose it. It was a perfect cycle, and Apple was outside of it. It had fewer users, less software, less relevance. And in that game, there was no way to win. Because Apple wasn't just losing, it was playing in a system designed for it to lose. So Apple wasn't competing, it was surviving. Until something happened. Almost ironic. The man who founded Apple, and who had been kicked out years before, came back, Steve Jobs. But he didn't return as a savior. He returned to a company in ruins. No direction, no identity, on the edge of collapse. For years, Apple had tried to survive without him and failed. And now the only hope was the person they once considered was the problem. And the first thing Jobs did wasn't to launch a product. He did something more radical. He started cutting. Projects canceled, teams dismantled. Projects that had been in development for years, gone. Apple was bleeding and just decided to cut without hesitation. It was a risky move because yes, Apple was now simpler, but still didn't have an answer for the big question. What was Apple going to be now? In the early 2000s, something interesting was happening. People were starting to listen to digital music, MP3s, but the experience was terrible. Complicated devices, terrible interfaces, and the music industry in crisis because of piracy. No one saw a clear opportunity there. No one, except for Apple. But yeah, there still was a problem. Apple was a computer company. What was it doing getting into music? It was a move that didn't make much sense. Going back a bit, in the late 90s, Apple started rebuilding itself. They launched new computers, simpler, more attractive. The iMac, for example, broke away from everything before. Colorful, transparent, different. And it worked. Apple was becoming relevant again, slowly. But they were still in a fragile position. Everything still revolved around one thing: computers. And even though they were better, they weren't enough to change the company's fate. Apple didn't need to improve. It needed to reinvent itself. And it meant doing something completely unexpected. Something that at the time made no sense at all. Now, in 2001, Apple launched something very different. A small white device. 1,000 songs in your pocket. The iPod. It wasn't the first, but it was different. Simple, fast, intuitive, and most importantly, it worked. The iPod was elegant, it was fast, and for the very first time, listening to digital music stopped being a hassle, and people responded. Sales started growing, Apple was getting attention again. It seemed like that was it, but it wasn't. The real breakthrough wasn't just the iPod. It was what Apple understood, while everyone else focused on their device. That the problem wasn't the music, it was the entire experience. How you discovered it, how you bought it, how you organized it, how you live with it. And while the rest of the industry was trying to sell songs, Apple decided to control the entire system. And that's where everything changed. Apple didn't just create a device, it created a complete system. iPod, iTunes, digital store. For the first time, buying music online was easy, legal, and actually enjoyable. While the industry was fighting the future, Apple was building it. The iPod became a global phenomenon, and Apple stopped being just a computer company. The iPod didn't just save Apple, it changed its DNA. Because the real move wasn't creating just a music player, it was understanding something that no one else saw. That the future wasn't about improving what already existed, but also redefining the entire experience. And that decision opened the door for everything that came next. iPhone, iPad, and one of the most valuable companies in the world. Sometimes companies don't fail for the lack of resources. They fail because their lack of vision. Apple was on the verge of disappearing, not because it couldn't compete, but because it was playing their own game. And it survived the day it stopped competing and started changing the rules. Because in the end, this isn't just about Apple. It's understanding how one decision can change everything. So if you're into stories like this, here's a video where I go into why Apple is so big and whether it's really the best or maybe not. And if not, YouTube thinks this one is for you. So see you there, goodbye.